So Pascale has been with us for quite a while, and it's been wonderful, especially on our mission circle on our board. We were really excited to have Pascale. We've had her for a few months there, and it's wonderful to see how Pascale both lives and teaches and brings sociocracy in many places of her life. So Pascale, over to you.
Thank you very much for this introduction. And I have to add to that that I've learned enormously working with you in SOFA. So if you're happy, then it's a total win-win between you, you guys and me. Yes, you were saying doing things in education. Actually, that's what I'm going to talk about in this inspirational 13 minutes that I have here. Part of it is going to be seeing the little things we can do. We don't always have to have big plans. And I'm hoping that my talk will inspire people to do the little things around them in the spaces that they have. Looking for the nooks and crannies of where we can actually develop democracy. So my theme to talk to you today is democracy in education. And I'm going to also focus on schools because it's very important, and so many of our children and young people spend so many hours there. So I think it's worth thinking about schools. I also wanted to say before I start that a lot of what I'm going to say is part of the development work of an organization that's called Learn to Change, of which I'm part of. And learntochange.eu offers a lot of resources. So some of the things I'm going to say, I'll point you to where you can find more information as I'm talking. It's been 12 years now that I've been working with teachers, and I feel very, very honored and inspired by the teachers I'm working with, especially doing teacher education. And the topic on which I work the most topics are education for democracy, democratic citizenship, intercultural competence development. So these are the themes that I think are very important for democracy. And also, I won't be talking about what we call democratic schools. There's a movement worldwide, also a European association of schools that are organized completely differently than state schools. What I'm going to talk about here is democracy, developing democracy and democratic practices in state schools. Some people say when we talk about this, they'll say, well, is it possible to be democratic in a non-democratic environment? My answer to that is that schools are made of different spaces, and the classroom is one of those spaces. And inside the classroom, a teacher has quite a lot of possibilities to do things with students. And even if the whole school is not organized as a democratic school, it's still possible to be active. So before I start, I wanted to read a small paragraph from Dewey, John Dewey, because he is the writer that has been the most explicit in terms of education and democracy. And it's an important quote because when we say democracy, people usually think about the institutions, the government, the elections, etc. All these are very official institutions. But what we're talking about is a bit wider than that. So let me read a bit what Dewey said. Democracy is much broader than a special political form. Beyond this, it is a methods and a means for realizing ends that lie in the wide domain of human relationships and the development of human personality. It's a way of life, both social and individual. The keynote of democracy as a way of life may be expressed, it seems to me, as the necessity for the participation of every mature human being in the formation of values that regulate how we live together, which is necessary from the standpoint of both the general social welfare and the full development of human beings as individuals. Now, this is exactly what we mean by democracy, and this is why it has something to do with sociocracy. because sociocracy is exactly that. It's developing the values that help us regulate how we want to live together. And it's a very inclusive method. And that's why, as we were looking at this concept of democracy in schools, we started adding different technologies or different methods. During these 12 years, we started, for example, with cooperative learning. Kagan or Johnson and Johnson have written a lot about cooperative learning, and the principles of cooperative learning allow a teacher to organize processes in the classroom so that everyone is included, so that everyone is participating, so that the work cannot be done if everyone has not contributed to the work. It has a set of principles that are very useful for that. We've integrated open space in classrooms. We're having an open space in this conference. It's also very useful for teachers in classrooms. Collective intelligence, base groups, action research, all these things we've gathered over the years. And the last one that we have now included in our training is sociocracy. Why? Because sociocracy is something that allows us to work on the posture of the teacher. So we often talk about switching from teaching to learning. So the teacher is seen here more as a facilitator of learning, and also teacher as the carer of participation, participation being the central piece of democracy. So it takes different pedagogies to do that. And I would like to give some examples. It's not only a question of technologies, it's a question of the values that are behind these technologies. And in order to allow teachers to really be agents of change, it is necessary to go to the values. So what do you think the purpose of education is? Ask yourself this question for a while. And then look at the education systems the way they are, and do they fit this vision of a purpose of education that you see? Maybe not. As we start working with teachers, we also go from values to how we embody these values. And it's about realizing whether you're a living contradiction or not. Do you actually practice as a way that corresponds to the values that you have? Or are you actually having practices that contradict these values? Sometimes we have the best intentions, but we need to explore our limiting beliefs so that we can go beyond the practices that we usually do. One big example of this and a hurdle for democracy in schools is assessment. So much teaching to the test, so much standardization. So looking at the values of the individual is important, creativity is important. You may want to start putting that into question and maybe switching from assessment of learning to assessment for learning with different methods that allow young people to really participate in their learning. I would like to give you some examples from teachers. So first of all, Audrey from France, she told us about a very good practice that she has using sociocracy in her class. She actually uses it to allow her students to choose parts of the curriculum. She's a literature teacher, so they choose the books that they want to read during the year using consent-based decision-making, for example. She also uses it for them at the end of a sequence to get together and see what they have learned. So debriefing the learning using sociocratic methods. The other example is Marta, and I saw that Marta is here with us today, which is great. She is from Spain, but working as a Spanish teacher in Germany. And she explains to us how she uses election without candidates to choose the class delegates. The usual way of choosing a class delegate is to see who are the good students, who has experience already in being an elected official of the class. But this procedure only reinforces the authority of experience as an exclusive argument for being chosen. which is not a democratic process. By using sociocracy and election without candidate, you allow people who are not usually in these positions to be able to participate. And the last example I'd like to take is teachers in Ukraine. There's a group of teachers doing fantastic things in an environment that is really not easy because Ukraine is going through a lot of turmoil right now. And they have been through a session where they looked at conflict resolution using sociocracy and consent-based decision-making to see how this conflict could be resolved. So that was very interesting. So these are what we could call Petit implementations. It's about disrupting the way we do things, but not waiting for the hierarchy to be ready or for people, the institution, to explain how to do things. But each professional can take the responsibility and the initiative to start changing things on their own level. And also this idea of continuous or continual experimentation is very important. For example, Audrey says, every day at school is a new situation. She doesn't go into a routine, and she's always thinking of what are the values being played out in the classroom. So sociocracy has been perfect for me. It's a new tool for me for democracy that I've added to my toolbox. It has changed a lot, learned to change as an organization also, because we used to be a classic association and we're now a sociocratic organization, which has brought a lot of clarity to the way we work together. It permits the inclusion of introverts. There are a lot of people who I didn't hear much from and who now I can really work with, and they can really contribute to the work that we're doing. And also learning myself about my relationship to power. Sociocracy has taught me a lot about that. And I think it has a lot of tools for that, especially when you start doing action research and on your practice of sociocracy. There you have a whole wide area that's opening to you to understand yourself more. I'd like to end with a call for action. We're very interested in knowing more about what teachers are doing with sociocracy in schools, in state schools, I repeat, because we want to be have an impact on something that is public, free, and where everyone goes. And I invite you to reach out to us. We're calling you in to the conversation for sociocracy in schools. So please do contact us. And I have the idea with other people, and so in SOFA, I think, to create some podcasts, some way to have these conversations, and that these conversations would be useful for others. So call to action, please do call.